Police officers of Reddit, what stupid things have people nervously said around you and instantly regretted? In my state, driving with a suspended license is a non-criminal traffic offense. However, knowingly driving with a suspended license is a criminal traffic offense. More often than not, when I pull someone over with a suspended license, they always start out by saying something along the lines of, "Look, I know my license is suspended, but, edit, poor phrasing, edit, I work for the city of Miami in Florida," for those asking. Not a police officer, but a CO at a jail. A man came in, and I told him to place his hands on the wall for a pat down. He immediately said, "The drugs in my sock aren't mine." Ex-NSW police officer, Australia. It loads. To give you guys some background, NSW police can pull people if they feel like it for a random breath test, RBT. No reason is required. You are not allowed to search the car without reasonable suspicion that they have committed an offense though, so sometimes you just ask some questions to see if they crack, more just for fun. One really sticks out to me. I pulled over a car full of young blokes all about 17. The driver is super nervous. I mean nervous enough that he was visibly shaking. I asked the kid if he had anything to drink. He squeaked "Sino." I could smell pot as soon as he rolled the window down. This plenty for me to search the vehicle, but I could tell the driver wasn't stoned. But his 3 mates were. I was going to leave it alone. He passed the breatho, so I asked him if he had any drugs in the car. He responded, "Not anymore." Well, duck mate. Ended up getting him out of the car and giving him some advice on talking to police. Usually just don't. If you've done something stupid, give one-word answers and don't admit to anything. And don't drive around carloads of stoned dudes. One will say something dumb eventually. He very nervously thanked me, then very nervously let out a loud fart. I swear he was about to cry. Poor bastard. Me after pulling over a 40-plus-year-old man on a scooter. Am I going to find anything illegal under the seat? Him. Nothing that belongs to me. My girlfriend was going through customs one time, and when the security guy asked her if she was carrying anything, she responded with just my explosive personality, followed by finger guns and a wink. This set of actions was immediately regretted. Not the officer, but the first time I was pulled over, the police officer asked for my license and insurance. I had never been in that situation before and didn't know what he was talking about, so I handed him my health insurance card. Lol, I had no clue why he laughed and asked if I had been drinking. Not a police officer, but the person who nervously said something stupid, was 16, super naive, and driving home after a late night studying with my friends at Barnes & Noble, taking back roads home. It's dark and no one else is out, so I roll through a stop sign. Police officer turns on his lights and pulls me over. He asks me if I had been drinking. Shocked, I said, "Excuse me, officer, I'm 16. That's illegal." Made me get out and do the whole breathalyzer and coordination test rigmarole. Probably thought I was being a little lit, but I honestly didn't realize anyone my age drank. Got off with a warning. Edit, for the non-US people, we can get our driver's license at 16 and a learner's permit at 15. So the funny part isn't that I outed myself as an underage driver, but that I was such a giant nerd that in the moment, I didn't even consider that it was possible for underage, less than 21, people to drink alcohol, and was confused that the police officer didn't know this. Edit, the warning was for failing to come to a complete stop at a stop sign. A warning is like a ticket, but there are no fines and it doesn't go on your driving record, as far as I'm aware. Edit, thanks for the gold. I had pulled over a guy for some minor traffic offense who I knew had a twin brother. He gave me his name, let's say Jeff. I decided to check the other twin's name as well. Boom. Warrant. I knew he was bulleting me but I couldn't prove it. I chit-chatted casually for a few minutes and then asked him what's Jeff up to these days. He answered and started telling me and I said, "But I thought you were Jeff." He didn't even try to get out of it at that point. Admitted he wasn't Jeff and went to jail. The annoying thing is that I later fell for this with another set of brothers and had to go back and arrest the kid the next day after he totally got the better of me. I knew a kid who was arrested after pointing a gun at the police after they stopped him because they got a call about car prowlers. When he tried to run away he slipped and fell. So they caught him. When the police officer was telling the other officers that the guy was trying to shoot at him, he said I forgot to take the safety off. He basically just admitted to attempted murder of a police officer and was sentenced to 13 years in prison at the ripe old age of 17. I once thanked an officer for giving me a speeding ticket. I work EMS, so I'm often on scene with PD. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people ask, am I going to get a DUI? That's like the only way you get a DUI for sure. Not an officer but the idiot in the situation. I was pulled over a few months ago leaving a popular restaurant bar in a neighboring town. I had one beer and was completely fine. I was in a rental car and didn't know it didn't have automatic headlights like my car. Odd to me because my car is from the 90s and this car was brand new. So it's about 11 PM and I'm at a stoplight across from an officer who flashes his lights at me. Well, the light had just changed so I thought he just wanted me to go ahead and turn, so I did and he immediately pulls me over. The convo from there. Officer, son, do you know why I pulled you over? Me, no sir. Officer, I flashed my lights at you to turn yours on and you know, you didn't. Me, oh I'm sorry officer, here's my license. Officer, okay. Be right back. Just have to mark down that I stopped you. He then showed me how to turn the lights on because I hadn't the slightest idea. Me, no problem officer. Just so you know though, this totally isn't my car. Officer, stops and looks at me. What now? Me, oh, no like, it's a rental. Holds rental papers out the window, like I didn't steal it or anything. Just thought you should know. No one has ever looked at me like I was so stupid in my life. Not a cop, and less nervous than being little. But when I was a kid my mom ran a red then got pulled over for speeding like 10 minutes later. The cop asked, do you know what you did wrong? My little child self screams from the backseat, yes she ran a red light. The cop nearly peed herself laughing and let my mom off. I have to. First, was a suspicious person behind a business that had been burglarized a bunch of times in the past. Me, what's your name? Suspect, Jonathan. Me, okay how do you spell it? Suspect, JOTHNATHN. Size, my name is Robert and I have a warrant. Second was a traffic stop. Driver is in tears begging me not to give him a speeding ticket since he was going to have his license suspended. Me, tell you what, if you have any information about something more serious than this ticket, I'll give you a warning. Driver, a couple buddies and I broke into a bunch of cars by Main Street. Me, you've got to be kidding me. Driver, I swear, all the stuff we took is at my friend's house. Turns out the driver was part of a group that was going through cars that were unlocked. We ended up arresting 4 people, 2 adults, 18 years old, and 2 juveniles. They all went to jail for a few years, but I kept my promise and did not give the driver a ticket. My friend apologized for not drinking after the cop asked her if she'd had anything that night. Close enough. A friend of mine is a cop and the first time he pulled anyone over it was a couple of teenagers in the car. My buddy says to them jokingly, "Alright guys, where are you hiding the pot?" They were instantly terrified so they opened the middle console and handed him an 1/8 ounce of weed. He couldn't believe it and said he honestly felt really bad because at that point he had no choice but to write them up. My brother was caught with a decent amount of marijuana in middle school. Told the officer I wasn't gonna smoke it, I was just gonna sell it. That was now a distribution charge instead of simple possession. He was never actually charged with anything though. Officer felt bad for him, I think. Edit. By felt bad for him I meant he didn't want to charge a 12-13-year-old kid with marijuana charges. In addition to feeling bad about his stupidity, there are a lot of good officers out there and here's one of them. Edit 2. Took out dumb rant. Edit 3. My brother is actually an intelligent person. He just hasn't made the best decisions with his life and at that age, wasn't exactly quick on his feet. When I was a teacher, I stood with Officer S, the school police officer, in the morning out near the bus lanes to greet students. One morning, mom drove up to drop her child off, rolled down the passenger side window, and called out to Officer S, "If you get a call about a break-in on Smith Street, Don't worry about it. It was just me. Then proceeded to roll up the window and try to drive away while he ran after her shouting, "Excuse me, Mom, I need to talk to you," and I laughed my ass off. As I was handcuffing a guy after a felony car stop for a stolen car, he looks around, sees all the cop cars and the helicopter. Says to me, "All this for a GTA? Why thank you sir, now I don't have to interview you." Late to the party, but here's one of many. I pulled over a woman for speeding one night. 45ish mph in a 30 mph zone on a gorgeous spring night with pedestrians everywhere. When I asked her if she knew she was speeding, she said that she did. She was having brake problems and was rushing to get the car to her friend's shop. The regret was obvious when I pointed out that if her brakes didn't work correctly, perhaps slower would have been the better option. There was a shooting in my town. Apparently the perpetrator was arrested and has been in the county jail for 2 weeks. He's made over 200 calls and has confessed to the crime in 3 of them. I'm assuming the drugs caused permanent brain damage. It's pretty common for people to openly admit to driving 10 miles per hour over the speed limit because they think that 10 over is acceptable. It's also common that they don't know the speed limit, so they'll admit to going 45 in what they think is a 35 but it's actually a 25. Your best strategy is just to be polite and play dumb. In law enforcement, but not a regular cop. Middle of search warrant looking for a bloke. Lots of drug convictions in the past. Found a still burning blunt in the ashtray in the living room, but no sign of the guy in the house. I am 99% sure he is in the roof cavity. I announced to my partner, "I think he is up there. Should we look?" Suddenly the ceiling starts talking. Hear the softest no. Hey, can they hear me? Nah, it's all good. So my partner said, "Nah man, I didn't hear that guy say we shouldn't look up there." Ceiling replies with, "Sweet. I knew they wouldn't find me." Needless to say, we looked and pulled a very stoned guy out from under the insulation bass. Side note, they make you itchy AF, so be careful choosing your hiding spots when you're stoned. Pulled a guy over on suspicion of drink driving. We didn't have an ESD breathalyzer, but he was so drunk he was adamant that my radio was a breathalyzer. Anyway, whilst we were waiting, he started to get really agitated as he thought we were up to something. He was begging to have a go on the breathalyzer radio. Eventually I let him blow into the radio antenna. Told him it was faulty and we had to wait for another. And surprisingly he failed and got arrested. Not quite what you asked for, but it still makes me chuckle. Not a cop, but my friend told me this. Pulled a guy over late one night. His car reeked of pot. My friend said it was no big deal, he just wanted to make sure the guy was safe to drive. Here is where things get weird. Guy has his hands on the steering wheel, ACA in sight, and is very polite, but forgot to turn down his music. My friend said it was like being in the front row at a concert. Told the guy to turn down his music, and know it, the guy instead of turning down his music just changed it to the local college station. Turns out he was on shrooms and smoking, and thought changing it to the right station would compensate for the lack of nocturnal noises. Had a friend who'd just gotten her license and was pulled over for RBT, and she was incredibly nervous only cause it was all new to her. The officer held out the breathalyzer and said count to 10. She goes yep and then is silent for a bit before the officer has to say out loud, "Please ma'am, oh right. Sorry. 1, 2, edit. Just gonna clarify cause a number of people are asking. In New South Wales, Australia. 1. RBT stands for random breath testing. Basically an officer will pull over cars at random, or there might be a small group of police cars along the highway that make passers-by pull in for a breath test. 2. The breathalyzer we use here aren't ones you blow into. You just talk and it picks it up off your breath. My mother is a police officer. She once stopped a woman who was on her phone while driving and doing something else as well. I don't know what exactly. Smoking a cigarette or something. Well, the woman saw them, panicked and intended to throw out her cigarette and put the phone away. Did it the other way around. Threw the phone out of the window. Edit. I just asked her. She said they were on the lookout for people who weren't buckled in. I don't know if this is the correct word. Like the seatbelt is actually connected. She tried to quickly buckle herself in. Instead threw her phone out of the window and didn't manage to buckle herself in either. You only pulled me over because I'm black. Not sure if she instantly regretted it, but I immediately phoned my supervisor, who also happened to be black, and asked him to come out, explained the situation, and he made me give her a ticket so there was a record of the infraction and interaction. I had to write a detailed report about it to cover our asses. I had someone drunkenly confess to me that they witnessed a murder and knew where the murder weapon was ditched. I am not a police officer, but I once heard a guy that was stopped by the cops nearby say that the pipe in his hand was for meth and not crack. Still makes me laugh. My father was a cop for many years and one of his favorite arrest stories was when he pulled someone over for simple traffic violation. I think he didn't do a full stop for a stop sign. When my father asked, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" the gentleman responded, yeah, it's because of all the sugar in the trunk. After my father read him his rights and was putting him in the back of his car, my dad asked just out of curiosity, "How did you know I knew you had drugs in the back?" The man ushered to the radar detector in the front and said, "I saw the drug detector on the dash and I knew you had me." My father still laughs about this one 20 years later. I drunkenly said woohoo right next to a cop as the wind knocked down concert stand, very large, onto a parked squad car. Pulled over a vehicle driving suspiciously slow and swerving on a highway late at night. Walking up to the car, he seems to be reaching under the seat. Knock on the window. "Do you know why I pulled you over, sir?" Him, "IDK speeding?" "No." "Do you know how fast you were driving?" Him, "No." "15 miles per hour." Him, "Oh well, I wasn't speeding." Me, "Yes sir, but you crossed the center line multiple times and he seemed like you were looking for something." Him, big smile on his face. "High as it are, yeah, I dropped my blunt." Regret immediately consumes his face. I can't help but laugh. "Get out of the car please." He steps out. "Me, any other drugs in the vehicle?" Him, "No sir." "What about that bag on the passenger seat next to the bowl?" Him, "Duck, I forgot I left that there." I'm internally dying from laughter. Take his license, he's ducking 17. I'm like, "Alright, but you got your parents' phone number?" Him, "Yeah." "Please don't call my parents." "No choice, but I'm not taking you to jail for weed. I'll let your parents take care of it. Dump your weed in the ditch, lol." Not a police officer, but I got pulled over. I thought it was because of the illegal U-turn I have done, and as the usual goes, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I sheepishly responded, "Because I did an illegal U-turn." He kinda just stared for a moment and switched on my headlights and said, "Your headlights are off and stop doing illegal U-turns." I'm the idiot in this situation, being apologetic by nature. When I got pulled over for rolling through a stop sign, I said, "I'm so sorry officer, I do it all the time." Not a cop, just dumb kid. In '99, after Phantom Menace came out, I thought Jar Jar Binks had the funniest way of talking. My family and I spent part of the summer in Mexico visiting family. On our way back at the border, the cops there asked each of us kids if we were American citizens, and everyone says yes except me. They said something along the lines of "Me sir American," all exaggerated because I thought it was funny. We ended up sitting on the side of the road in 100-something degree heat while they tore apart everything packed in the back of the truck. My mom was sitting with all 4 of us girls and holding my 6-month-old brother and pinching the id out of the back of my arm. I still flinch when people touch the back of my arm. TL. Doctor, I spoke like Jar Jar Binks at the border to be funny when I was 7 and still regret it nearly 20 years later. Not a cop, but I knew a kid in high school that said something incredibly stupid after the cops pulled him and a friend over. He decided it would be a great idea to get out of the car and run. He got about a block or 2 down and then stopped, turned around with his hands up and said, "Psych." He instantly regretted it when he was tossed on the ground and arrested. Man was beaten unconscious by 3 men. I caught one of them escaping on foot, but he vigorously denied any knowledge of any incident. Another officer had collared someone he thought might also be involved, but had little evidence other than the fact he was running away and couldn't really account for his presence. The other prisoner was being taken to a cell just as I walked into custody with mine. My prisoner looked at him and immediately yelled, Matt has got nothing to do with this. You should let him go. He wasn't even there." A+ for friend loyalty, C for avoiding self-incrimination. I got hit head on by a drunk driver years ago in front of a rural truck stop. Dude was out of his car and getting coffee in the diner practically before his car stopped moving. Insanely quick. He stays in there while other drivers are trying to get me out of my truck. Jammed door. I'm bleeding from several different places. Crying. Scared. etc. Finally, I'm tucked away in the ambulance while MR. Duckhead is being pushed into the cruiser. He asks the officer if I'm okay. Pissed the cop off. He shouted that it would have been nice to find that out before he ran into the diner and how he's not falling for the sudden nice guy crap. It made me laugh through my tears. To add, I was 19 and am now 44. I've had back surgery related to this accident and will always have back problems due to it. He caused me lifelong medical issues and couldn't even be bothered to stick around. I hope he got cirrhosis. Edit. To clarify, hit head on by a drunk driver. I was passing a friend, being an idiot, on a 4-lane road. Out of nowhere this other car jumped out in front of me and caused me to have to gun it and swerve over into the other lane and pass the dude who'd pulled out, narrowly avoiding clipping my friend's car who wasn't as attentive to what was going on as I was. I saw the cop driving the opposite way but didn't even get to hesitate and still pull off the timing I needed to. The cop stops, turns around in the middle of the road, and turns on his lights. I saw him turn around and was already pulled over before he had even turned his lights on. I was then parked at a gas station. He says, "What were you doing?" I was trying to avoid a collision. "Sir, you were driving recklessly. Don't give me that bullet. Sir, if I'd not swerved I wouldn't be talking to you right now. That other car absolutely pulled out in front of me without checking. HMPH. I can't say for sure what happened because I didn't see it, but I don't ever want to see you driving like that again." Then, somewhere in my brain the next logical thing for me to say was, "Well, I was speeding." "What the duck did you just say?" was my reaction. To myself. The cop, completely perplexed by my confession, looked at me with his head cocked to the side, not unlike a dog that is trying to figure out what the baby talk noises you're making are supposed to mean. He then turned around, sat down in his cruiser, and drove away. I then sat there staring blankly out the window, people walking past me going into the station, and I could only put my head down on the steering wheel like the moron that I am. I used to intern for a prosecutor. We had one case where we had the officer's report for the DUI. After completing and passing the field sobriety, the guy told the officer, "Oh good. I thought you were going to ask me to say the alphabet backwards. I can't even do that sober." We kept a copy of the report in the office for later laughs. Also not a cop but rather the stupid nervous person. Got pulled over because one of my headlights was out and I responded with, "Oh yeah I know that, but if I just hit it with my scraper, it comes back on." I think the only reason I didn't get a ticket was because it was such a stupid response. I got pulled over walking home from the bar pretty trashed, and after the cop searched me he said, "So, do you have any warrants?" I said, "I don't know, do I?" Hold my proverbial beer. I was a mall cop for a time, and it was about as stupid a job as people expect it to be. However, I drew the graveyard shift as it was at least interesting. Most of the time. Picture the scene. 3 AM. Huge empty lot. One SUV parked crooked in the middle of this sea of concrete, and it's the only car there. I take the patrol truck over to look at it, and there are 4 young women in the truck. 3 are sleeping. When I knock on the window, 2 wake up. Fast forward through the obligatory "Is you okay? Private property. Suspicious vehicle. See your ID. Blah blah etc etc. Me. "So what are you all doing here?" Driver. "We just had dinner and were resting. It disagreed with us." Me. "What did you eat?" Front passenger. "Potatoes." Me. Pointing a passed out drunk chick in the back. "Did she eat potatoes too?" Front passenger. Giggle. Hiccup. "Know it. Oh yeah. A loot." They all giggle. That is when I ask the county sheriffs to come remove these drunk asses from my sphere of liability, which they did. But when the radio call went out for 4 drunk teenage girls in a mall parking lot, well, the response was impressive. State cops, city cops, county cops, university cops, which were equivalent to state cops, fire, EMS, and one subsecretary of state cop. It was a freaking circus. Edit. Wow, 930 votes. Thanks for the positive feedback. Edit 2. Wow, 1200 votes. This is my third highest post. Thanks everyone. All those years of mall copying misery is starting to pay off. Once pulled a woman over for speeding. Upon approaching the car, I noticed she has 4 young children in the car and that none of them are secured in their seats, even though there were 3 car seats in the back. So I explained why she was stopped and inquire as to why none of the kids are belted in. Her response was, "I don't have time for that." Yes mom, I'll be right back with you. Went back to my unit and ran her, noting that she had received a ticket the previous year for the same thing. Just 1 child. Roger that. Wrote her for speeding. And 4 for the unsecured kids, totaling $900 in fines. If she had said they had unlatched to see the policeman or some other reasonable excuse and had them buckle up, I probably would have let her go with a warning. Buckle your kids in.